Hey everybody, John Huber here from the Maryland Education Network, brought to you by Maryland K12. Today I'm going to wander into the podcast world. I thought it'd just be an opportunity for me to stretch out a little bit and kind of dive deeper into some of the subjects that I like to talk about, in my videos, on the websites and whatnot. So, you can only do so many of those things. Excuse me, so many of those things. Those videos, 3 to 5 minutes, people just stop watching. So I thought I'd do a little podcast here. The opportunity for you to, if you like what I have to say, you can always, stick it in the car, listen to it on the way to and from work, or later at night at home after the kids are bed, you can sit down and listen to what I have to say. And it give me a chance to kind of dive into some of these topics a little bit. In a sense, that's why I'm going to start working on these podcasts. So this is the very first one. This is season 1, episode 1. And here we go. And the first question is always, well, what are you going to cover? What topic is it? I thought a lot about it, like, how do I want to start? And when I talk to people, their biggest concern about K-12 education, whether it be in the state of Maryland or any other state, is school safety. School safety, student discipline, kind of interrelated, but in a sense, it's two different things. When we talk about school safety, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today, we are talking about essentially there's two types of threats, if you will, two types of sources of harm. There's internal and there's external. I think that pretty much goes without saying. Obviously, internal, you're talking about a student who is intent on doing harm, either to another specific student or a student in the school who just wants to do his harm to as many people as possible. I'm not going to get into all the politics of the gun legislation, all that stuff. I'm going to strictly talk about the school part of it. When it comes to, and part of the thing I want to do is kind of give you a look on the inside about what's going on in the school. And the first example, and I mentioned this in some of my videos, the first example we have is in this most recent shooting out in Texas in Uvalde. If you're not familiar with it, essentially a crazed gunman went into school and started shooting people up. That's in a nutshell, as horrible as that is. And they talk about how did he get in the door? He got in the door, or how did he get in the building? He got in the building through an unlocked door. So when I talk about school safety, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. The first question is, well, why was that door unlocked? Well, the door was unlocked because of complacency. I don't know all the specifics, but I can tell you, if you go to they're probably locked now, but I bet on that given day, you could have went to many, many schools across their country, and there were probably doors that were unlocked. Then once he got in, then what? Then how did he get in the classroom? He got in the classroom by going through an unlocked door. And if you looked at and I mentioned this in one of my videos, if you looked at the Uvalde system's policies, it's very clear. Teachers will leave their doors locked all the time. Under no circumstances should they be unlocked. And in this case, this door was unlocked. The teacher was going to the door to lock it because, all hell was breaking loose. She runs to the door. The gunman beats her to the door and says, "Good night," or something of that nature, shoots the teacher, goes in the room, shuts the door behind him, and then starts killing everybody in the room. So why was the door unlocked? The door was unlocked because of complacency. The teacher probably had it open for whatever reason. And then it just, this kind of thing happens everywhere. I can tell you of dozens and dozens of times. We used to have these lockdown drills when we still used to do lockdowns. We would be doing a drill lockdown. We would run around and not half, but there were a lot of the doors we'd go grab and the doors would open. And I go in and ask, well, why's the door open? Oh, I left my keys home today. I didn't know we were going to have a drill today. This kind of stuff. It goes on all the time. So the idea that we are going to somehow regulate schools and teachers into these policies to prevent this from happening is just not going to happen, in my opinion. One of the reasons is this. As I mentioned, you have internal threats, you have external threats. The internal threats are there. They're all there. The gunman in the Florida shooting just went in there and started shooting people. And he was already in the school. And the same thing, the one in Detroit, or it was in, I don't know if it was in Detroit, it was in Michigan somewhere. And the kid was actually called down to the guidance office, and the guidance counselor met with the kid, and the kid convinced the guidance counselor that all was fine, and she sent him back to class. And there's a little bit more involved in that, but that's pretty much what happened. The kid goes back to class, and later that day goes around and starts shooting people up. So there are tons and tons of threats. Maybe not tons and tons, but it happens. It happens all the time. And from the inside of the school building, I'm just not sure what we can do. I would love to hear some comments, and then when you talk about, well, we need to put metal detectors at the doors and all that, people don't want that, because they don't want their kids living in a society where we have to, put metal detectors at doors. And everyone thinks, well, this would never happen in my school. Yes, it will. It can happen in your school. The odds are pretty far out there. The odds are pretty clear that it's probably not going to happen in your school, but it very, very well could. So when we talk about school safety, these are the kinds of things that we're talking about. And if you want to give it a go, wait until the first day of school next year and go to your child's school. Go up and hit the buzzer and tell her you want to come to the school, and you want to come to the office, and you have a question, you want to talk to the principal, you want to talk to the assistant principal. Tell them to come to pick your child up, whatever. They may ask you a few questions. What's your name? Blah, blah, blah. Who's your kid? Whatnot. And you say, okay, come on in, Mr. Jones. And they're going to hit the buzzer, and you go walk through the door, and you're in the school. It happens all the time. I have spent 30 years in these schools, and I have been in many, many, many schools. Some schools are a little tighter on security than others. But the bottom line is anybody with a little ingenuity can get into these schools without too much trouble. So when parents talk about school safety, that's the kind of thing that they're worried about. They're worried about external threats and, in some cases, internal threats. And it is a legitimate concern for any parent of a child in any school. I'm not so sure what the answer is. We can do all we want and put signs up saying this is a gun-free zone, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like the genie's out of the bottle. And there are a lot of guns out there, whether you think that's a good thing or whether you think that's a bad thing. It's just the truth. There are a lot of guns out there, and I'm just not sure what we can do about it. Other than the things that these schools have done, and they have these policies, these strict policies of you have to be in the classroom, you have to shut the door, you have to keep the door locked, you have to have someone at the door, have an SRO at the door for the external threats. I think the issue in the Uvalde shooting was simply just out of complacency, and it was just a collision, a series of events that all unfolded. It's kind of like an airplane crash. There's never one specific thing that causes it. It's a series of events that gets started for whatever reason, and anything in that chain can break that event. And unfortunately, in this case, nothing did break that event. Then, as far as Uvalde goes, you look at the situation down there, and you wonder, what in the world were these cops doing? Essentially they just didn't go in, and it's one of two. It's either gross negligence or gross incompetence, or it's cowardice. And I'm not sure which one. And there's kind of a fight back and forth. But in either case, it's either gross incompetence or it's cowardice. If you're not familiar with that, apparently the shooter was in this room with kids for almost 45 minutes while they're in there dying, and the door locks. The door opened to the inside. It swung in and it didn't swing out, and that was part of the issue. They could not get the door open. They had to find a custodian to bring them keys, and oh God, and God help anybody who's involved in that in any shape, any way, shape, or form. Whatever your thoughts are on the police, the way they acted in that situation, you just have to just temper it with a little bit of compassion and understand what these people were up against. Now, I know that the cops, that's what they sign up for. And if you're not ready to go kicking in the door and go after this guy at risking your own life, well, then you don't belong wearing that uniform. And that's the way I see it. As far as school safety goes, it goes back to, in the state of Maryland and others, it goes back to, like I said before, those policies of keeping your school safe by virtue of creating a system of accountabilities that is maintained day in and day out. That's the hard part. The day after that Uvalde shooting, I'm sure things were very tight, and I'm sure 1,000,001 emails went out saying, because of the aftermath, or I forget how they used to word them, but it would say, in light of the Uvalde shooting, please reiterate. We would get these as an administrator. We would get them to say, in the light of this, blah, 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 please reiterate the need for making sure the doors are locked. And every school has a system to buzz people in, and it's a system where you come to the front office, and they ask you for a license or some kind of identification, and then they scan it. And then they give you a little sticker, and those things they're scanned against. They were originally worried about child sex offenders, those sorts of things. That's the reason that those systems came into place. Like if you were on the child sex offender list and you went up to the school, and even if you had a child there and said, I need to come in and see my whatever, and they say come on in, they would scan your license. And it would flag it, and it would say that you're on a school, you're on the sex offender registry. And I've had to deal with that a few times over the years when I'm in my office, and there was like an internal type of notification that would go out. It's not like the lights would start flashing and sirens were going off, but you would get instant notification as an administrator through text messages, emails, what do they call it? The email that goes straight through, forced email or whatnot, pushed. It would push it straight through, and it would pop up and say, hey, there's an issue in the office. You need to get there right away. And we'd come in and we'd find out what the story was. But so these are the things that we're talking about: school safety. I'm just not sure there's a lot we can do about that, other than enforcing the policies that are already there. And this is probably one of my big things about education, is I believe there's a knee-jerk reaction that everybody wants to react to some type of a situation, and they want to make it like we want to create a policy to fix it. That doesn't always work. And it's the same thing with the government. Whenever something goes wrong, politicians don't get me started on them, but the first thing they want to do is they want to pass some kind of a law to what they think will prevent it. There's no need to pass any laws, or there's no need to create new policies. because every policy to prevent something like that is already on paper and it is already in place. It's just a matter of enforcing the policies that we already have. In Uvalde, they had policies in effect. Those doors should have been locked. The teacher should have had the doors locked. I don't know what the policies and what the protocols are on the part of the law enforcement, because I don't know a lot about that. But something tells me that wasn't it. So this was a failure on all parts. In the Michigan shooting, where the kid went to the guidance office, there were policies that were in effect there. The school, I can tell you, in Maryland, there's a lot of policies that counselors have, administrators have, that I had, about threat assessments and that sort of thing. And they are there. They are on paper. They are in place. They just need to be followed, and the problem becomes complacency. There's nothing that could possibly go on in these, or that went on in any of these shootings, that was not a violation of some policy on the part of the school system. Speaking of the school shootings and these sorts of things, there is a report. I'm going to put it up on my website from the GAO. The GAO is the Government Accountability's Office. Came out in June 2020. K12 education, characteristics of school shooting. And like any other government document, it's way too long. It's about 58 pages. And yeah, I read the whole thing. But the good core stuff is right up at the front. There's some statistics. And I'll kind of briefly tell you a little bit about what they're saying, some of the statistics. As far as the kind of school shootings, they're saying about 31%. There were total school shootings were 318. And the first thing is, well, what's a school shooting? I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I could go into how they defined it, but pretty much any kind of a discharge of a firearm, I think, in a K-12 school, they pretty much counted. They're saying 31% were dispute related, where there's some kind of an argument or dispute between two people, and one person is generally shooting another. Conflict, fight, including gang-related violence and all this sort of stuff. That was 31%. The next highest one was 16%, which was accidental. And then you get into 14%, which were targeted, school targeted, meaning that generally speaking, the shooter was targeting the school, specific students or staff, that sort of things. And then 11% were suicide attempted, where students tried to kill him or herself, or maybe even did kill him or herself. And there's a variety of others. So as far as motivations and the types of school shootings, the majority of them are dispute related, and then the rest have to do with targeting of specific individuals. Now, who were the shooters? There's a stereotype of, the white kids in the suburban areas who do the shooting, and stereotypes don't come from nowhere, because in most cases, those types of school shootings, that's usually who the offender is. But what they're saying is that almost half of them, 49%, that were either students or former students, okay? And then there's a variety of them, like police officers were, 4% were police officers, and I guess they would count them, or maybe they were discharging a firearm in the course of their duties. 4% were teachers and staff, parents, relatives, etc. There's a lot of other. 12% were no relation, and 19% were unknown. So that's quite interesting. Location and the type of location, 61% were outside of the school building. So these are the ones you hear about, at the bus loop, there was one in Catonsville not too long ago, outside of the school building during dismissal, during morning entry, morning arrival, that sort of thing. And then 39% were inside of the school building. So that's a little breaking. And I'll put this full report up on my website if you want to take a look at it. And just to kind of wrap up, the bottom line is, just want to talk a little bit about these school shootings. Anybody who goes on any TV show or any network anywhere and says that they have the answers to do this and to do that. And they're crazy. I don't know what the answer is, but what I can tell you, what's the best thing school systems, I believe, can do is to enforce the policies they have on the books now. Do what's already there. If you look at Uvalde's, the Uvalde systems procedures, there were plenty of things on the books that they should have done and they should have been doing and they didn't do, and it cost them. And I can assure you that come this fall, when the school system's open, there's going to be problems. And I mean, there's maybe not anything like this, we hope, but you never know. And if you do, you're going to, when they get to the bottom of it, they're going to go back and they're going to go, oh, well, this door was open, that door was open. Teacher didn't lock his door. What about substitutes? That's another thing. People, and I can tell you this, in some of these old buildings, the keys to these rooms are like a big bucket of mismatched, rekeyed, overkeyed things, and half the schools don't even have keys to these doors anymore. Some of them are old and the strike plates don't line up, and it's a mess. So I can tell you from firsthand experience, we would have these, I mentioned before, we'd have these drills and you go around, a lot of teachers couldn't even lock their doors. So anyway, I hope this is of interest to you. Might have been kind of boring, and that's fine, but if your biggest concern is school shootings, school safety, that kind of stuff, then you might want to keep on top of your schools. Look at here's what I would highly recommend you do. Look at your school's website, find out what their procedures are. Find out what in most cases, these come from the county, these are district level procedures. Find out what their protocols are about teachers, about locking their doors, that sort of thing. Get the doors locked, have it, make sure that they're done. And anytime you're in there and you're just walking by a classroom, reach up and grab a door and go to open it. And if it opens and it's against their policy, turn around, go right back to the office, go to the principal and say, I just walked by room number 14, that door's unlocked. And they'll go, oh, we're sorry, Mr. Jones. That's there's a substitute in there today, or that was Mr. Smith's room, and sometimes he's a little forgetful. We'll make sure we'll remind him next time. Okay, but so you want to be vigilant. Here's another thing you might want to consider doing. Right, get certified as a substitute teacher. Very easy to do. Fill out a couple of forms. Get a little background check, with a fingerprint, whatever they require. Take a day off of work, maybe once a month. Take a vacation day and sign up and go down and substitute in your school and see from the inside yourself what's going on in that school. I highly encourage it. I'm not here to try and suggest there's anything wrong going on, but I think that the more you know, the better you might feel. So anyway, I hope this helps. And if you have any questions, comments, I want to hear from you. Here's the big thing. If you have any individual personal experiences that you would like to share with me, or if you want, I would love to do some interviewing, bring some people on, have you talk, and do it all virtual, of course, from your house. You just get in touch with me, and we'll go from there. I want to hear from as many different people. If you have any ideas and comments on this particular topic, then I hope to hear from you. So thank you very much for tuning in to episode 1, season 1, or whatever you want to call it. This is John Hubert with the Maryland Education Network, brought to you by Maryland K12. Thanks, and have a great day.